Hello and welcome to another edition of Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Smith with Tree Service Digital. We've got a special guest today, Peyton Brewer with Direct Scene Services in North Georgia, Blairsville, Blue Ridge, all the surrounding areas. Peyton, welcome aboard, man. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. If you guys are listening to this after the fact and you're on YouTube and you get some value out of this podcast episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or like it on your favorite podcast player. We're on all the podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all the podcast major ones out there. So, well, Peyton, cool, man. So Direct Scene Services, tell us a little bit about like when you got started or how you got into the tree service business to begin with.
So I had started for years. I worked at a plant. I was actually in high school. I competed in welding fabrication. And so I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a welder. And everybody was pretty discouraging about the trees. I kept hearing, it's dangerous. Stay out of the trees. It's dangerous because I always loved to climb. I actually started I deer hunt, and I started deer hunting out of a saddle. And so that's how I got really accustomed to spending a lot of time in a tree. And there's definitely some differences between an arbor saddle and a tree saddle that you would hunt out of. But that kind of kicked everything up, and that's what got me to start ignoring other people and doing what I was enjoying. And I fought it kind of back and forth, and then I ended up starting like a lawn care business on the side. And there was a guy who asked me if I would prune some trees. And so at the time, I didn't use the term prune. It was trimming, right? We were trimming some branches off. And I saw that there was a market for it. And so I actually bought a steel handsaw. I had chainsaws, but I was nervous. I did not want to take a chainsaw into the tree. So I took, and I had a bit of a rock climbing background too, so I was familiar with some knots and stuff. And so I kind of started into it that way. And so that was kind of like how I went from, that was where my trees got started. That was like oh, I like doing this sort of a thing. And I didn't get into it for the money. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, there's good money in trees. There's good money in trees. And there is, or can be, if it's orchestrated correctly. But I got into it because I liked the trees. And then the money was a byproduct, which made everything go so much better. So I wouldn't recommend someone who doesn't like trees getting into it for the money, because you could be pretty swift to burn out if it was just about the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a similar story. We hear that a lot about people who start off in either lawn care and landscaping and sort of just determine as they go that they really want to kind of stick with tree service or kind of pivot into tree service and stick with that. And so it sounds like yours is kind of similar, right?
Yeah. So I had some clients. This has been several years ago. We were very fresh, and I hadn't really dove into the tree thing. But I actually had a tree fall the wrong way. It was supposed to be a really simple job, giant pine tree and a huge old dead oak tree, and it was full of hornets. I don't know if they're like European hornets or Japanese hornets, but they're big.
They'll leave a mark, right? They'll leave a mark on you.
We could not kill them. But I sprayed gobs and gobs of bee spray on this tree, and it did nothing. We didn't get stung, but it did nothing. So I ended up hiring an exterminator company to come out, and they dusted the tree. And there were some really cool things after the fact. Like we cut it up into chunks, and there was actually about like 8 or 9 foot worth of nest in the base of this tree. Like we got to watch the bees hatch. It ended up being kind of a cool thing, but the tree fell the wrong way. And I climbed up the tree, and I put a rope in it. And of course I was a little bit shook up from the hornets, and I was like, oh, we'll pull it down. And I was not using the appropriate rope for the task or the appropriate power to pull this big tree over. And I there's no probably, I wasn't as good at assessing the canopy to see where the mass was in the tree and kind of predict what it's doing. So that tree fell the wrong way, and I had to lick my wounds. I actually didn't damage a whole lot, but I had to clean the tree up because it was now in an area that it wasn't supposed to be. And then because it was so dead, the only damage that was done was actually to a BMW, and which, nice expensive car, but the top of the tree exploded when it hit the ground, and so it put some minor dings in it, and that tallied up to like $3,000 in damages, and that was a huge thing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's a big learning experience. One of the things I'm envisioning with the Hornets is my parents had one of those. I don't know why they had this thing, but it was in our laundry room growing up. It was this big, massive, like abandoned hornet's nest. Was it one of those big, like gray looking, like stick paper looking nests?
Yeah, it was all of this was literally inside the tree. So they had a hole at the bottom, and it was
Okay.
so it was the center of the tree. The heartwood had rotted out, and these bees had chiseled away at it, and I mean, thousands,
Yeah.
thousands of them. It was huge.
Yeah, it seems like everybody had one of those in the country at some point. One of those big, huge, abandoned hornet's nests. It's just massive
Yeah,
nest. I don't know why they
yeah.
kept that thing, but they always had it.
I
Okay,
had
so
one.
the tree fell, and it was kind of a learning lesson, right? I guess.
Yeah, and so I decided my personality is I don't run from problems. I want to tackle them head on, and it scared me to death. I mean, but whenever it happened, I handled it. Even looking back on it, there's not. I mean, there are definitely some things I would do differently, right, to move the tree the other way. But as far as once the tree was on the ground, I feel like I still today I feel like I handled the situation well. I immediately notified the homeowner, and went through the process and like, hey, let's tackle this and get it taken care of. And it rained. It fell an absolute torrential flood, which was horrible. But I decided at that point in time that I wasn't going to ever let that happen again. And so from then, I decided I'm going to be the best that I can be. And I just started raking in knowledge. I went full tree, not from a business perspective necessarily, but from an educational perspective. I started studying some arborist books at proper pruning techniques. I watched a lot of guys who were felling trees, reading. I joined the TCIA. They have just a whole host of resources you can go after. And then one of my clients that was here is good friends with a guy who runs a very big tree service, actually where you're at, and his name's Kevin Caldwell. And he was gracious enough to kind of take me under his wing and give me some pointers here and there and growing the business. And so from time to time, I still go down and I'll shadow him, see what he's doing, see what the crews are doing. I'm looking at the entire atmosphere. I get to go through the office and be like, hey, what's your job? What do you do? And so there's all of those things that kind of came, the business end of the trees came after doing them, but I had to be able to do the trees. Right. And I had to be able to do them safely and efficiently.
That's
And
awesome.
so that was kind of where we got started with that. But kind of if you take knowing all that, if you take one more step back to the very beginning before I started the lawn care thing, I had my boss at the steel shop had a shed that was outside the back of his house. So if you imagine like a house and a garage making an L shape, it was tucked inside the L shape. And he said he wanted to get rid of the building and I could have it if I could get it out. And so I had nothing like I have now. There were no machines, no nothing. So the best that I could do was some ropes and a pickup truck. I didn't even have a block. So I took my pickup truck, but I drug that building out and was able to get it around and use some trees as blocks. And it was a very, very tight fit. He had basically bet me that I couldn't get it out. And so I got it out to the front and I hired a rollback to come pick it up and bring it to my house. I was going to store my wood for the winter in the shed. And the guy offered to buy it from me. Now hindsight's 2020. I sold it to him for $800. He was like, "You take." I was like, "He's like, you want to sell it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll sell it." And then he's like, "What do you?" He's like, "Take $500 for it." And I was like, "No, I've got a trailer that I'm keeping wood in now. I was planning on keeping the wood in this, and I paid $800 for the trailer, so it's worth $800." Now, the dude probably sold it for $5,000 to $6,000, and it is what it is. But
Mhm.
I begged my wife. So we went from, I was going to pay him like $120, I think, to move the building. So instead of being down 120, we were now up 800. And so I had to beg her to let me start my own business. And I was like, we weren't planning on having this money, and now we have it. So let me spend it. And that was a tough conversation because we very much lived from paycheck to paycheck. I had a little boy. We were now I now have two, but we're raising kids and we have daycare and all these other things, and that money could have very well went somewhere else. But my wife, being as gracious and supportive of me as she is, she finally said, "Okay."
Well, there you
She,
go, man. You got to stick your neck out there at some point to get started. And that was really cool. So you shared the seed of kind of where the business was formed and how it was created, and then the conversation between you and your wife. Another thing too that you mentioned there that was good. Everybody should take note of this is join the TCIA, right? Any questions you have about your business, running your business, getting training, all of that really is affiliated with TCIA. They have everything, literally anything you need.
there's
Yeah, and then on top of that, you got yourself a mentor, which
right,
is another powerful thing in any business that you start or get into. It's always good to have somebody you can talk to about next steps of business, how the business operates, seeing for yourself inside of his office and all of that stuff, and shadowing him. Those are really smart things to do early because that way you don't repeat the same mistakes that other people may be repeating, and you get to get the knowledge firsthand. So all
yeah.
great cheers, man. Yeah.
So we had a philosophy. There's a older guy. He's a pastor at a church. He and I were very good friends, and he told me a long time ago. He said, "Look," he said, "a smart man learns from his own mistakes, right?" He's like, "If you make a mistake and then you continue to make the same mistake, you're probably not very smart. But a wise man will learn from others' mistakes." And I was very young whenever, I mean, early teens whenever that was told to me. But I've applied that over and over and over, and it's huge because every mistake that Kevin has made that he can educate me about, I get it. And then I have some other mentors as well. Kevin's kind of like the tree guy. I have another mentor who's very much just business related, money management, how to manage a business. And he gave me advice probably 4 years ago that I'm just now understanding enough to take it. And so that was a big eye opening thing for me, that I was getting good advice all along, but I didn't have the knowledge to apply it. And so knowledge is very much key, I would imagine, to anything.
Yeah, and,
No,
and another thing too, you can get a lot of that knowledge, like you're talking about. It's very powerful, very informative. But until you kind of get into the trenches and start doing it too, some of it won't make sense until then, right? And then you're like, oh, now I know exactly what that person was talking about.
so you're gonna laugh when I tell you what the piece of advice was, because it directly pertains to you. I was discussing taking out a loan to buy equipment to do more work. I was actually looking at buying an excavator, and he told me, he said, if I was going to borrow money, I would invest it in marketing. And I looked at him and I'm like, I'm so busy right now. I need to get more work done. I don't need more jobs. So it didn't make sense until now.
Hmm.
After seeing, marketing can feel very expensive, but there's always that option to get that. It's all about ROI, return on investment.
Hmm.
So I get more ROI on marketing than pretty much anything else. And I mean, it makes it a no brainer. Pay
Yeah.
for marketing.
That's awesome. And to figure that out early is always a plus and a benefit. And it's not about, going with us for marketing. It's just about marketing in general. If you go with anybody with marketing early, you get your web presence solidified. And some of these things take long, a good while on Google or Bing or Yahoo, any search engine to kind of solidify and cement and keep moving up, right? In the search rankings and establish your presence. And the earlier you start that, the better. So it is an investment of some sorts. And then some of it will generate calls right away, which is the paid ads and things like that, and signs you're putting out, lettering your trucks, doing direct mail. There's a lot of things you can do. But the earlier you figure that out, that you need to invest a percentage of your revenue in marketing, the earlier you'll get to the other side, which is high visibility, known brand in the community, kind of the go-to tree company, and people will refer you around a lot more because now you're visible all the time. And that's what's going to create those impressions to the local community that you're the tree service company to go to, right?
Yeah. And the other thing that I didn't realize was I'm building a brand. So like Direct Scenes is my brand, and we do things way different than a lot of other tree companies, just due to me as an employer and how I like to do things, and we can kind of dabble into that a little bit later. But there was something really magical that happened at the 5-year mark, and I had no idea it was coming. But for whatever reason, during that period, people go from, oh, this guy just started doing trees, to this guy does trees. This is what he does. And then it didn't take very long after that to become the authority on trees. So people, like, there are people who I know that are perfectly capable of doing a lot, and I get the calls for the giant oak tree right between two houses where there's no margin for it. They're like, whenever I that's what I branded myself to be. I wanted to be that guy because those are the types of trees that I enjoy. Not that there's anything wrong with doing more of like production work, fell the tree, clean it up. All of those things are fine. They're just, it's not my taste. And so we do mainly strategic trees, if that makes sense. We do really high risk. If it's really high risk and there's 3 or 4 other people that have turned it down, they're going to say, call this guy.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that I wanted to be. But had I known that I was building a brand for myself early on, I would have taken a lot more time. And like, we went from, it was Direct Scenes Landscaping, and then we went to Direct Scenes Services and had a variety of services, and that's still where we're at now. But Direct Scenes, I had this conversation with Wes, Direct Scenes Tree Service would have been fine, or Direct Scenes Trees, or whatever the case is. I would have thrown a tree service in there because I had to work, and Wes's team had to work a lot harder to establish that, hey, we're a tree company, because it's not right there in the title, which really would have made an astronomical difference. I mean,
it helps, because then it's like, what do they do? Oh, tree service, because it's right there every time, and people that already know your brand and your business already know that, of course. But anybody new, fresh eyeballs that see it, they, if you give them exactly what you do right there in the name, then it's pretty obvious and they don't have to think about it. So it's perfect, man. Yeah. I remember going through this at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to go back and try to redo or change anything now, but it's one of those things that all of the little pointers, like, I guess for example, like me hooking up with Wes, had I been a little bit more, I mean, we had a variety of things going on. I'm trying to understand, and I'm very edgy and kind of back and forth. And Wes is trying, like, is he trying to sell me? Is he trying to help me? We're having this kind of give and take back and forth. And then finally I sign up and see how everything happens. And once I understood a whole lot more of what you were doing, it made it make a lot more sense. But I would say it's invaluable to have someone like yourself in charge of my marketing, and for what you charge to do it, there's no way that I could put someone in-house that is as highly skilled to do that. And I've been very, very pleased with with the service from you guys and the
Oh,
update,
much.
what's going on.
Mhm.
Uh, it's been huge. I wouldn't. I think you and your team has helped me take leaps and bounds opposed to baby steps.
Well, you
Where
know what? Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, man. I think so much, and we try our best to do the best in like communicating with our clients what we're up to, how things are going, how things are progressing. But you guys are doing well too out there, and you're doing the work. You're creating the name for yourself, and just look, you got your shirt on right now, man. It's about those impressions.
yeah,
Impressions are just how many times people have viewed your business name, your logo, your all of that. And so by wearing the company shirts, having the trucks lettered, having your website look professional, having your
yeah,
social media ramped up, your ads, you show up every time somebody searches for things locally online. All of those things go into the basket of marketing. It's not just one thing, it's a multitude of things. And that creates the brand, which creates better marketing down the road because the more times your brand is shown and the more people kind of remember and resonate with your brand, and they directly associate you, Peyton, with the brand. And you're the guy, like you said, that does the hazardous tree removals that everybody else may turn down or don't have the equipment or expertise for. So it just starts amplifying every year. You get further and further and further along with it. And by staying in front of everybody, it just exponentially grows. Right. So,
and
yeah.
it breeds good. Like I feel like the way that you market will breed the clientele you want as well. So like there's nothing that we market that says I'm the cheapest.
Yeah, and you don't want to, that's really kind of the cutting corners type business, and so you're not going to be able to deliver the type of service that people that want good service to give them, right? You're not going to be able to give it to them because you got to go off to the next job and go charge another low price for the next job, so you don't have time to spend with each client like you would if you weren't the low
Right.
price leader.
Yeah, and people want to be educated on their trees too. People, I take it for granted because I grew up here and my dad, he did grading work and I helped him clear lots and I spent a lot of time in the woods and so on and so forth. I was pretty accustomed to the species of trees that were here, not necessarily abroad, but just in my region. And I hear people, they're like, what kind of tree is this? What kind of tree is that? Or even some of the people that work for me whenever they first start, I'm like, hey, tie this block over there to the base of that red oak. And then they have it on a poplar tree. And they just don't know the difference. But people really gravitate to inform me if they want to know. Some people don't care. They're like, great, you're hired. Or,
Sure.
whatever the case, they don't have any desire. As long as you know they're happy, like what you're doing, they're happy.
Mhm.
Other people, they want you to tell them, and they'd love to just sit down and talk about trees all day. They find it incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's a big push these days too, is tree healthcare, plant healthcare, saving trees, kind of doing things like that. And by adding that as a service as well, certified arborist or becoming an arborist and being able to consult with the homeowners and business owners, that's another plus, right?
If I had it to do over again, I would have built strictly a plant healthcare business, and I would have focused on strictly saving trees and caring for them, or plant healthcare. You can make that as broad as you'd like.
Mhm.
Uh, but that's what I would. That's how I would have done it. And there's a whole variety of reasons why. And I hope to open a plant healthcare division, but education is mandatory.
Yeah.
And
There's a
that
lot to learn on that side of it, right? There's just different. It's a whole different side of the business.
yeah, it's totally different, and there's a lot more formal education that's available on the plant healthcare side of things, certifications and so on and so forth. But whenever you run a full-time business, and I mean I'm already working 60, 70 hours a week on average, and then trying to take on more formal education, and there's too many things that have to be moving that take up too much of my time to do that at the moment. So I'm trying to get there, and then that's ultimately a goal. But if anybody wanted to start, you could do incredibly well in most areas of the country.
Well, and the
uh,
good thing is too, is that once you build your customer database and your brand and your name, you've kind of got that following already. And so you keep a database of your customers and a tool like Jobber or Arbostar or Single Ops or Arborgold or whatever the tool is, you've got your whole database of customers, or heck, even in QuickBooks or something like that, if you're sending out invoices. By having that database, you can then educate your customer base once you get to that point. It's not something you have to do overnight, but let's say down the road you wanted to do that. You finally got to the point where you're ready to launch that side of the business. Now you can email market newsletters and educational materials about taking care of the trees and the plants and all of that. And you already have kind of a built-in customer base to launch that side of it, right? So, and a lot of people are interested in that. So it'll definitely hit a nerve when you start doing that. Other things you can do is little videos of doing tree trunk injections, or the pests that are invading the trees. You can do videos of those things and post those on social media, boosting those or running little small inexpensive budgets to those types of ads locally. People will see those and they'll resonate with those. There's a lot of little ideas you can do with that.
Yeah, and likewise, like even what we're doing now, we draw a crowd most of the time. People love watching trees be surgically removed or
Yes, they do. Yeah.
I mean, love it. So like, it's been a few months ago, we spent all day taking apart a white oak tree that was probably 140, 150 foot tall, somewhere in there. And it was right between two houses, and there was no way at all to drop it. It was like in the middle of like a little garden area that they wanted to keep, and every limb on it went one way. Every limb. There was not a single limb at all that went towards the one house. So this house over here owned it. The tree's leaning hard this way, and this guy wants to cut it down. And so we were doing some other trees while we were there. It ended up taking us like 3 days to get done with that one, but one tree all day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Some of them are huge like that.
Every piece had to be wrote. And then whenever we got down to the trunk was so big, I actually had to lift the firewood pieces off of it that I was chunking down with the material handler on my bucket truck, because they were so heavy. Whenever they hit the ground, I dropped one just to see, and it just cratered the ground.
Oh yeah, massive trees. Yeah.
Yeah. It went so far into the ground, we had to pull that piece out of the ground with my excavator.
Felt like a small earthquake when that thing hit, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's crazy how all these different things can come about, but people loved it, right?
Well, so that's a good little marketing piece there, right? So let's unpack that just for a second. So the next time you do one, man, take videos of you guys doing that up in the tree. You can take an iPad and take a nice, awesome video of you guys surgically removing a tree, show the access of it in between the houses. Those are great for social media, great for the website. And then also, after COVID, man, everybody learned how to use QR codes at restaurants. So now everybody knows how to use QR codes finally. I remember before that, everybody's like, what is that? You know what I mean? But now everybody knows how to use them. So a good thing you can do now, and we can configure one for you, but is put a QR code on your truck, on your business card, and say, scan me to learn more. And that'll be basically when they scan it from their mobile device, boom, they click on it, they load your website instantly, because most people are kind of lazy on a mobile device. They don't want to type stuff in necessarily. So that'll be an easy way for people to pull up your website. You can send people to your Google review link with a QR code. You can send people to your website. There's a lot of cool things you can do with that. But as people are riding by, they can take a quick snapshot of that QR code. If you have a crowd like that, right? And everybody knows who you are, and it just kind of keeps going viral. So that's another pointer for that. It works well.
I should absolutely do that. I mean, there's no reason not to.
The videos for sure.
Had some drones and all of the things to do the filming. I just don't take the time to do it.
You know what, man? The cell phones these days, I think our Google Pixel phones now have like 25 or 30 megapixel cameras. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like crystal clear. You can just do cell phone videos of you guys doing the work,
Right. And they great.
You can see, if you send us those, we make a little commercial video of your video doing the thing. We'll put some music on there, the logo, direct scenes, the trucks, all that stuff, and kind of incorporate it within like a 45-second video. And those things are powerful, man, to share on social media, put on the website, put on YouTube, things like that, man. So yeah, next time you're doing one, I would say to do that.
Definitely need to do that for sure.
Well, cool. So you guys are kind of starting to grow the company. Where are you guys? So you getting some equipment? You guys are getting a following. You're kind of, you're in the Blairsville, Blue Ridge market, really kind of attacking the whole North Georgia area up there, man, and really kind of making a name for yourself. Where are you guys headed, do you think? Where do you want to see yourself go in the next few years?
So it's I'm not it's a constant evolution. Um, you kind of have there's pretty much two options in my mind, and that's hold what you got, get everything paid off, and if I had no debt, we would do exceptionally well with the equipment and the crews that we have. Um, that's probably not the route we're going, but I think the next place I'm investing is in people. Um, Trying to find some really good people who care about trees, who care about the work, who want to do it, and then go from there. Because there's only one of me, and so quality individuals and having quality employees that I can know and trust and care about on that they're there on the job site. I know they're going to take good care of my customers. I don't want to have this whole back. If something happened between an employee and a client, I don't want to have to wonder if it was my employee.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to know, like, they're always respectful and polite and whatever else, and because most of the time it's probably going to be the homeowner, and it depends on the kind of the scenario. Because I've certainly had some rotten eggs for employees as well. But I'm looking for the first time. I offered someone a job. It's been a few weeks ago, and he ended up not taking it because we were friends, and he was like, "I just don't want to." He's like, "I don't want to work for you because we're friends, and I don't want to mess up that relationship." And I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough." But it's the first time I've ever even considered offering someone a job where they make over $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like a big leg. But this guy was very qualified.
Yeah.
very, very qualified, and I was totally persuaded that he was going to be able to do what I needed to do. So it's just a matter of finding that. But I need someone who can do some training and kind of orchestrate the work portion of it, so
Mm-hmm.
I can spend more time selling jobs and doing things like that. There's a hot lead versus a cold lead. It's so much easier to sell a hot lead.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever someone calls me and I'm like, I can be there in 15 minutes, and then I can educate them on it. And I mean, most of the time they're going to seal the deal right
Yeah.
there. And a lot, like, I never discourage people from meeting with other contractors ever. I'm always feel free. You help yourself. This is my thing. This is what I do. If you like what they're selling better, then by all means, go them. I'll encourage you to do that. Most of the time, they get quotes and they call me back.
Yeah.
And it's all in what you expect. But I'm also very adamant about, like, a lot of people, like, tree guys are known for, like, the drugs. Like, you got the crackheads or whoever working for you to clean up the brush because you can't get anyone else to do it. That's not
Not
us.
the image and not the team you want out there. Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, we're like a very tight knit team. Um, I I have mixed emotions about recreating with employees, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the number one requirement is that you're going to be a team player, or you can't work for me. And I also typically refer to it as the guys who work. They work with me.
Mm-hmm.
We're a team. Yes, I'm the boss, and I write their paycheck every week, but we're a team.
Sure.
And that it's huge. I mean, a lot of guys they get used to it, and then they quit, and then they want their job back, and their job's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens.
The grass is always greener, did they find out?
Yeah, and I've had people tell me, well, if you had all this equipment whenever I started, I'd probably still be helping you. And I'm like, well, you didn't hang in there until I could get it bought.
Yeah, yeah, we had to move this in steps, right? So
Yeah, I mean, finding people who are like forward looking, like they know what's coming next, those are definitely things that I'm looking for. And a good attitude. I mean, all it takes is one person to they can really zap the whole life and the vibe out of a team.
oh yeah, you don't want a bad egg in there. It's kind of a cancer for the whole company, and they can kind of sour everybody, at the same time they're doing it. So this is great, man. I mean, that's the next step, really. You build that team up and it just continues to kind of grow. And organically, you guys are getting out there. You couldn't be in a better area, North Georgia, like the mountain area in the region for trees, man. There's so many trees up there. You're in a great area for that. I mean, I think you guys are poised for a lot of growth moving forward. Before we started the call, we were talking about the trimming on the power line with the helicopters, man. Why don't you share some of that? Like, how'd that come about? I guess they got contracts with, is it a helicopter company or a tree company that
So,
just subcontracts with the helicopter company?
I'm really not sure. I guess it would be like a helicopter tree company. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what. So I got to meet these guys at the
Hmm.
airport. They rented a hangar or
Hmm.
lease a hangar. You can't buy them. And they have two helicopters that they keep in there, and they're big saw and stuff. So I was talking to them one day at the airport, and it's a very cool thing to see. It's you have a helicopter, and then there's this cord rope sleeve thing that's
Hmm.
dangling the controls in it, and then there's a pivot point on the top of the saw, and there's a pivot point on the bottom of the helicopter, and it has a bunch of circular saw blades that like they stagger,
Hmm.
and seat on the helicopter, it like slides out to the side so they can look down and see what's going on, and they just kind of give it this rocking motion back and forth, and they clear these power line right of ways. And so there's one guy in the helicopter and there's another guy on the ground who's helping with the refueling and whatnot. They can get, they cut so long and then they come back and they cut so long and come back. But they're like, they'll set up in like a church parking lot or anywhere that they can find. They'll find people's fields and be like, hey, can we set up here? And everybody's like, yes, because it's very cool. They're like, oh, they were flying the helicopter in my field.
Yeah.
And so they set it up, but they're, to the best of my knowledge, I think one crew running a helicopter in a day's time can do like 7 crews worth of work.
Wow.
Uh, and that's on the stuff that they haven't kept already. And so it's supposed to basically triple, somewhere close to triple after the helicopter's done it. Whenever the helicopter's coming back the next time, instead of the guys on the ground, it's already pretty uniform, and so they can just roll through it and just buzz them off, and they can cover so much more
Well, that makes
than.
sense, right? Because the truck, you've got to continually reposition your location so you can get to the next batch of the tree limbs, right? So historically, this is like bucket truck type services where
Yeah, pretty much
if you're in
bucket
the
truck.
woods, well, let's say you're in the woods on a power line. I mean, sometimes the bucket trucks can't even really get out there. So I guess this is just way more efficient because it can go anywhere too,
So,
right?
another thing that another thing that I've noticed up here is there's a lot of subcontractors for the power companies doing this kind of stuff. So even if you were a small crew and or something, you just want, a little bit nervous about it, you could try to seal the deal with a company like that to get a contractor just clearing right away if you needed income, or something to justify, like, this equipment's expensive, right? So like a new chipper I have a 15-inch chipper to ban it, and a new one is like $97,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you go to 18, they're like 119.5. So
Yeah, you
they're,
got to get the truck for all the material and the brush to fly
yeah.
into too. Yeah.
And so you're pretty much, it doesn't matter which way you slice it. If you're going to get something that's dependable, you're going to spend 100 grand pretty easy. So if you needed something to justify that, a power company or whoever does that, I mean, they're subbing out, clearing right away, and if you can go out and get in on a contract like that, it would be production work, but it would be steady work, and it might help ease your mind a little bit if you're worried about generating jobs.
Right. Yeah. And the trees don't stop growing. So they got to continually be trimmed every quarter or year, however often they do that, I'm sure.
And everywhere here is everywhere is right away. Like they on the sides of the roads, they go over the mountains. I mean, it's all trees everywhere. So there are very, very few places that don't need maintenance, and they can't even get them all maintained annually. So they're just having to like go off of zones, do some here, do some over there, and then you have problems. You know, a storm blows through.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of the first. You're going to be a contractor that they're going to reach out to. They might go out and get the line back up, but opposed to and then have you come in and clean it up afterwards, or whatever the case is. It's just it would be a good place to potentially.
Yeah, nice little niche, right? It's kind of interesting and fascinating about the tree service industry and kind of where it's headed, like the equipment and kind of where things pivot and move to make things easier and more efficient and more time efficient. It's
So
crazy.
I
Yeah,
saw
helicopter. Who would have thought?
I saw something the other day. The guy who prints my shirts and cards and stuff, he sent this to me. Somewhere in China, I guess I don't know if it was a TikTok video or what, but they have made a laser and they're pruning trees with a laser
Wow.
for removing them. So it has like it's a remote control handheld thing with a sight in it, and it hits the tree with a laser beam. You see the laser start to smoke, or the tree start to smoke. It's like burning through it, and then the limb falls off.
Wow.
And I'm like, if they could ever perfect that to where you didn't have to put someone in a tree, and you could, like, if you could really get a precision cut. I'm not sure how it would work as far as the burning goes on the pruning. I've never.
Yeah. I don't imagine you could do that in really dry areas like in the West.
Yeah, probably.
Start a fire.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not dropping flames or anything like that. It's just burnt when it gets to the ground. And
Yeah.
oh, that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I mean, there's
Yeah,
all kinds of things that are just being developed, I'm sure. Well,
that's
awesome, man. Yeah, I want to be respectful of your time, man. I know you got work to do and everything, and I appreciate you sharing the day. What would you give like so let's say there's guy or gal, they're just starting off in their tree business. Maybe just some words of wisdom on, kind of maybe some pointers of what to look out for, just mentality, maybe mindset of like starting your business and getting to where you are, where you're getting established, you're growing, your business is doing well, you're busy, you're booked out, like maybe some of those tidbits in between from when you started to now that would help somebody maybe just keep pushing forward or believe in themselves or just keep taking action.
it's definitely a grind. So uh, I had I didn't really grow until I fully committed, and then there are days where it's hard. There are days where I'm just like the heck with it. I want to sell everything and just be done, right? Or the employees will drop like flies, or whatever the case is. There are a lot of things they were very much unforeseen, and just grinding through that is pretty key, because it gets better, right? And everything that you have that comes up along the way, that's one more tool under your belt for next time. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, okay, I don't have to smash the panic button. I've seen this before. So this is how I fixed it the first time. I'll fix it the same way again, or adjust on it a little bit or what have you. And then absolutely find some mentors. Huge, huge, huge thing. Find mentors, whether it's a business mentor or a tree mentor or whatever the case is, but find someone and a group of people and say, these are the people, this is where I want to go. I want to be where they're at, and then hang around those people and see what those people do and why they do it, because there's going to be a lot of things that don't make sense, and then as you get there they begin to make sense. Like, oh, so this is why they do that, or this is why they do this, or whatever. And then it's personalities and stuff too, but mentors are huge, huge,
That's
huge, huge.
great. And then the TCIA you mentioned earlier, get affiliated with that organization. And there's just a lot of missing ingredients to your business that you can kind of plug into and figure out with
Yeah.
them too. Right?
So in my head, my Kevin, one of my mentors, he's the one who pointed me toward the TCIA, and so that got me there. He said education is big, but mentorship was also huge. And it does something for the soul for someone who has made it to look and say, I believe in you, and I think that you have what it takes to make it too. Like that's something that would money can't buy it, you
Yeah.
know. And so if you're really true to the core and you're doing it, and someone thinks enough of you to give you some type of mentorship or leadership, then it's really really big.
That's powerful, man. That's good. And that makes a lot of sense because I think people that have been there and done that and have gotten to a certain level in their business, they want to share and they want to help other people who are eager and that show the promise that they can make it as well. Like, cause you've got to put in the work and you got to put in the time, and not everybody's going to be willing to share, but a lot of people are. And I would say gravitate to those people that are willing to help you and just kind of take you under their wing. And like you said, I mean, being an entrepreneur and a business owner, you're kind of all alone out there, so to speak, on an island, right? Yes, you have other people you can talk to, you have friends and family, but not everybody understands the mentality of owning a business and being a part of it every day and that grind that you mentioned. So it's always nice to be able to kind of bounce ideas off or just have conversations with people who have been there, done that. It makes you feel better because they've done it before too, right? And they can kind of help you through those situations.
Yeah, and even the reverse of that too. Like I was having issues with some employees, and I called Kevin. I'm like, "Hey, this is what's going on." I'm like really flustered, and he had almost an identical situation going on at the same time. And it's like you begin to learn what's part of it and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some things that it's just it is what it is, and it's going to be that way. And if you don't like it, then don't be in business.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to put it. Are there any last tidbits you want to toss out there? Or I appreciate you sharing today, man. This has been great.
I mean, I look for those gold nuggets, and try to, whenever someone tells you something that you don't understand, don't knock it, but listen to the people who are where you want to go, and you can kind of let some of the other ones fade to the wayside. Like if you're 45 and you live in your mom's basement, I'm probably not going to take your advice. There would have to be some other circumstance that would make me want to take advice from you. But now, if you're, 30-year-old or a 30-year business owner, you've put your kids through college, and you've got, a yard full of equipment and employees that are happy, that, that are working there, and you still love doing what you're doing, I'm probably going to listen to you, right? Because I want to get there and I want to still love it when I get. So if you don't enjoy it now, it's not going to get better as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of just cut the ties right now. Well, this has been great, man. Thanks so much for sharing. Guys, if you have any questions or comments and you're on YouTube watching this afterwards, just comment below. Love to answer questions, see what you guys are thinking out there. Peyton, thanks so much, man, for joining us and sharing today. This is going to help a lot of people, man. I really appreciate
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm open if anybody wants to reach out or has any questions or whatever the case is.
Thanks, man. I'm sure somebody will take you up on that. This is so Peyton Brewer with Direct Scenes Tree Services up in Blairsville, Georgia, North Georgia, Blue Ridge, all those surrounding areas. These guys are making a name for themselves up there and growing the business. So I appreciate you guys watching. Again, this is another episode of Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast. If you haven't joined our free Facebook group, do so. It's on Facebook. It's Tree Service Marketing Secrets. Just request to join and we'll approve you right away. And until the next video, we'll see you then. Thanks so much.